Hello there, and welcome to a new video for Age of Wonders 4. In this one, I'm going to introduce a new build for the Mystic culture revolving around the Mana Addicts trait. You need to unlock that via Pantheon points, and I'm going to explain how it works, everything in between, and, well, the timestamps are down below, so let's get started. So, at first, I want to explain what Mana Addicts actually does. So, it gives all your units the Mana Addicted attunement, which means whenever we cast a spell in combat, we gain lifesteal for all of our units. But if we don't cast a spell, we suffer a morale debuff of 5. It's nothing too harsh, but it means we want to cast spells every single turn. With a Mystic culture, that's relatively easy to achieve. That's why I felt like these guys were the go-to guys for this kind of strategy. As a secondary part, I chose Runesmiths out of, well, the reason that I want to have a lot of mana available. You could choose whatever you like, there are different paths to take, but since I personally like unit enchantments a lot, I mean they are really stupidly powerful, and therefore this was a no-brainer. In the body and mind trait section, I went for resilient because I love status resistance. I hate disables, and this is a pretty good way to prevent yourself from getting frozen and whatever. But you can choose whatever you like in this body trait department, because, well, there aren't too many really must-have choices here for this build. I just personally like to go for defensive traits because you have a stupid amount of damage in this build already, and therefore choose to your own liking. The second thing, the mind trait, is a little bit more, well, shoehorned. You don't want to say no to more magic damage. The other traits here available aren't bad, but since the Mystic culture is so much around spellcasting, this is pretty much a no-brainer, in my opinion. Let me know if you guys see a valid, really competitive choice with this one, if you know one, because I haven't found any so far, and I would like to. That's all I can say to that. So let's get on over to the tomes. The first tome I pick up for this build is Evocation. It's just such a strong synergy with the Mystic culture in general. Lightning focus makes your baseline battle mages just more powerful, gives them a damage over time effect, which is just amazing. Fulmination is one cost-efficient AoE nuke. It's a lot of damage, and it even applies a damage over time effect, and you will use this spell a lot at the beginning of the game. Lightning Blades is also a very important tool for your army because, you know, we got a lot of lifesteal. That means our melee units are so much stronger than other melee units could be because, you know, they can't heal themselves up when they are in duty, and stronger attacks are just something you want to have in that scenario. So Lightning Blades fits very well into this kit here as well. And the Lesser Storm Spirit is also a really cool thing to add into your build because a shock unit fits very well into this roster out of one simple reason. It breaks the retaliation of the enemy, and that lets your melee units just leech completely. When there's no retaliation, you gain all of your attacks as a healing, and this is a high synergy with this build again. The Evoker is basically just a stronger baseline battle mage. Don't overestimate the electrifying arc. I personally think this spell is a little bit underpowered. Maybe I underestimated, I don't know, but I felt like it is okay, but not much more than that. But the Evokers are really good as a power-up for your baseline roster because they have a stronger base attack. Lightning Torrent is a pretty nice map nuke. It shaves down lightning resistance, and since we have already a lot of lightning damage, this ain't a bad thing. If you can afford it, just smack it on the enemy before you engage. Not a bad thing at all. The Channeling Tower is also really good for our culture, because conduits are very synergistic. More mana, always a welcome sight. The second tome to pick up for me is Cryomancy. It has a high competition with Pyromancy, you can also really pick that up if you want to. High synergy as well, because you have a lot of payoff there too. I'm going to talk about that a little bit later. The Cryomancy Tome, though, I picked it up out of several reasons. The White Witch is a nice add-on because she provides a freezing blast and pretty steady attack damage via frost bolts. We have Ice Coffin as a strategic tool to take out single units, and I have already frozen tier 5 dragons with that. If you have a luckier roll, it all can happen. The Frost Arrow spell is mostly useless because we don't have that many skirmishers. If you happen to summon some snow spirits, of course you could have it, but this is, in this build, not really a big competitor here. But you can add it in if you want to, of course. Frostblights, on the other hand, is much better because, you know, more damage for melee units. I already explained why that's a good thing. And Blizzard is also a great thing because it lowers the enemy's status resistance. I really look at this spell at the, mostly because of this line, because this means that you can freeze the enemy easier. School of Cryomancy is a nice add-on because, you know, it is just good to have something to add knowledge points, and it's a research post. Both of these building types have a high synergy with the mystic culture, and that was again another point where the Pyromancy Tome failed me. Okay, so tier 2, let's get into that. Here again we go for Amplification, one of the most overpowered tomes in the game. So here we want to have it because of the frenzying focus, first and foremostly, because that's the point where your battle mages go totally bonkers. They gain 10% more damage per attack, and if they get to shoot 3 times, they apply 3 stacks of frenzy. So this is massive for you. You want that ASAP. And the amplification pylon is also a really good companion for your build, because it buffs up your nukes, and it is also something to cast every turn, and it even smacks the enemy. Well, a tiny little bit, but overall, high synergy in this build. Amplified arrows, well, you can only use it for your skirmishes, but we have a few in this build, so if you want to, you could opt into. It makes your skirmishes range attacks a lot more powerful, but skirmishes are more powerful in melee, therefore, meh. I wouldn't really force it into, just pick it up if you really feel like it. The Astral Blood, though, has a stupidly high synergy with this entire build. We already have Starblades, we already have Mana Addicts, so yeah, give us some extra critical hit chance on top of the spells that we spam the entire time already. Wonderful spell. Nothing bad to say about it at all. And Chain Lightning, I like that one too, because sometimes you want to nuke the enemy and they stand a little bit scattered, and this spell fills that niche of enemy positioning so darned well. It is a little bit low on the damage side, but sometimes it just fits that little situation where you want to have it. And Amplify Minds, well, I rarely use it in this build because knowledge income isn't too hard to come by, but well, if you want to, it's there, it's available, and it's powerful. Don't forget to add up some spell amplification into your heroes roster, because it really starts to add up with all the extra damage you get from these extra traits over the course of the time. Resonance Fields, again, a conduit that adds in more of the stuff that we already want to have. The only downside, you will rarely find the time or the goal to build that as fast as you'd like to. The other tier totem that I picked up here was Mayhem. Several reasons for that. Mark of Misfortune is synergistic with skirmishers and battle mages, and Misfortune is just debuffing the enemy so darn good. This is really just so good for us because it makes our not so strong front line so much more resilient. When the enemy has a chance to just hit us way less hard, that also makes our life stealing more effective. All in all, strong synergy. Mark of Misfortune alone. Curse of Misfortune lets us spread that stuff in a 2-hex radius. Sometimes the enemy is just too resilient at the very first turns to nuke them. This gives you an opportunity to cast something. It's really good. Also, Infectious Insanity. My goodness, this spell is amazing. It often forces the enemy unit to just attack their fellows, and if you cast it at the right time, you can delay an enemy, or you can even delay an entire banner. It's a little bit random because Insanity not always does what you want to, you know. It's just random what it does, but I've had very, very good experiences with that. So confusion, well, I personally find that a little bit underpowered because we don't have that many siege project slots with this build, so probably something you want to skip. Summon Gremlin, on the other hand, is really nice because that's the other skirmisher unit we have access to, and they enable flanking right immediately. They are not that easy to kill because they just teleport away when they get the first smack. They are just a pain to deal with, and they are summonable, so they make the perfect fill up units together with the elemental spirits to just you know, give you what you need in the case you should ever have to have some losses, which doesn't happen too often with that build. So, tier 3, we hop on over into Tome of Pandemonium, because most of the time, if I go Mayhem, I go Pandemonium as well, especially if I am on a mage-heavy build. Havoc Magic is just so darn synergistic. We gain chances to inflict random negative statuses with our battle mages, and why should we not want to? Mass Hysteria gives you a 1 hex radius debuff in that regard, and Vassals of Chaos utilizes the inflicted negative statuses even more. It's highly synergistic with what we already do, and while other builds can utilize Vassals of Chaos more reliably, it's just one of the most logical choices in this tree and area. Inside Revolution is a nice tool to create new brigand camps that you can loot, and the Chaos Eater, well, I rarely use him, but the interesting part is we have a lot of Battle Mage buffs on him, on this build, so he's actually a really, really good fit, but I rarely find the time to use this guy. So the other tier 3 tome to pick up is Summoning. You can also pick up Teleportation if you want to. It's very, very fitting too, but my late game was aimed more for this direction because several reasons. The Astral Serpent fits to this playstyle so darned well. It's a tier 3 fighter unit that can turn itself invulnerable for a turn. The interesting part about that is, since lifestealing applies to any form of damage that you deal, these guys can be surprisingly more resilient because, you know, they start to heal themselves when they get to attack. They can heal themselves if you time it right with a Shattering Refuge, and all in all, the Mana Addicts playstyle makes it really, really good to work with these guys. The Astral Keeper gives you another really nice supporter on the way, and Static Charge. I like to use this one because it is just a little bit of extra damage again, a little bit of healing, and most importantly, another supporter that our build can actually really use well. Arcane Restoration is pretty cool when we work with Magic Origin units already, and Arcane Supercharge, well, makes one of your units go Super Saiyan. Who doesn't like that? Very strong synergy on the Astral Serpent. That's something you can cast every turn again. And Arcane Bond is, well, the spell to just annoy the enemy if he's working with summons himself. I love that thing, alone for that reason. Summoning, well, yeah, well, give me that next conduit. You know, Mystics already love that stuff as well. And Wisp Familiar, I love that one because throwaway units are awesome, and this little sucker here is a battle mage, so who doesn't like that? At that point, you should be able to just destroy everything on the map. This build is fairly oppressive. It's hardly fair, and, well, when you enter the tier 4 tomes, things only get worse from here. So the build as I play it here uses the Astral tier 4 tomes, but if you went for Pyromancy, as you might notice here, you would be actually able to get into the 6 affinity points that you need for tier 4 Chaos tomes, which are actually really, really synergistic. I just want to glance over it. Chaos Channeling and Chaos Lord make some really, really nice options here because we do cast a lot of spells. Chaos Channeling can give you nice nukes, nice immunity against fire. When you went for Pyromancy already, this is very, very synergistic. Demonic Focus is amazing for battle mages, so I have a hard time deciding which one I like more. And Gremlin Ambushes gives you throwaway gremlins whenever you fight in the vicinity of any city. Really good stuff. But here we go for Astral Convergence, because that is also a massive thing for this build, and I found it quite fitting to the Mana Addicts theme. So Arcane Maelstrom is a siege project we won't use that much, but if you happen to use it, well, you can already nuke the enemy right from the get-go. Pretty sweet stuff, but like I said, we don't have that many siege slots, so I'm not too fond of siege projects. But Explosive Manifestation, this one. A random tier 2 summon with a 30 damage nuke. You will love this spell. It will eat up your mana, but it makes you really unbeatable because you can just span out all those creatures whenever you need them and hurt the enemy with it. It's just stupidly good. Astral Shattering, well, it is the same logic as Inside Revolution. You can destroy the enemy's infrastructure from the distance. It's amazing, but costly. Astral Attunement here, on the other hand, makes our units ethereal, which is amazingly powerful, and we gain mana and knowledge per population, so really, really good stuff. Very fitting to our playstyle, and Cascading Power is really good because we nuke the enemy even more for what we already want to do, cast spells whenever we can. So I really, really love this. In Arcane Surge, just pick that up for your heroes. It's just more of the same, and yeah, like I said, this build is slightly oppressive. And Astral Mirror would be the other one that you pick up, and this finishes your build completely, because at that point, Mirror Veil allows your frontliners to actually reflect magical damage. The Mirror Mimic can just copy whatever is most powerful on the enemy's side. Astral Revelation is giving you the ability to just double your units and, well, more summons. And, you know, in a nutshell, this tome is just more of what you need to stay alive. This is the defensive side, and Astral Convergence is more the offense side. And Archmage, well, once you hit Archmage, you should be able to just destroy everything, because the spells and enchantments in here are just way too powerful to that I even need to feature them here closer. So let's talk about the military playstyle here. It's very straightforward and simple. The hardest part is the early game, when you don't have anything going on for yourself, when you just have to work with your arcane guards, arcanists, and if you get lucky, some evokers. Here you will have to rely on your hero a lot and on your regenerative powers. So if you want to make it yourself a little bit easier, your starting hero can be a shock unit, because this way you can enable your melee dudes to heal off the enemy, but a support hero would work well too. So at the beginning of the game, one of your major goals should be to rush to the second unit tier as quick as possible, because without soothers and spell shields, your arcanists can deal a lot of damage, but you get overrun so darn fast. So I want to mention here the importance of the soothers. Until you have access to the tier 3 tomes supporters, these guys are all the support you get. And while your units are really good at leeching themselves up, sometimes you need that little smidge of burst heal. You just need it, and that's where the soothers come in handy. So every triple banner composition should have at least 2 of these guys. Also, one really nice thing, spell channeling makes your spells cheaper. You only need it once, but you should really, really bring it, because it's that good. The rest of the playstyle is very simple. Most of the time, you don't need your melee units to attack much, because you just hunker down and let your arcanists, evokers, and white witches do the heavy lifting. So you can slow down the enemy by a ton with those spells that you got. The white witches can freeze the enemy. Fulmination is there to nuke the enemy in the larger scale. Ice Coffin is there for you to slow them down. And all in all, you shouldn't have any problems with the early game whatsoever, as long as you have mana, but that's also not so hard to achieve with this faction. When you get into when you get over this part, the next big thing to go for are the Spellbreakers. Try to get them into your roster ASAP as well, because they are just that good. Stop Purge is a 1 hex radius nuke, and most importantly, it removes the enemy's buffs. This is so oppressive. Once you are able to remove the enemy's buffs, there is no stopping anymore. Because whatever strategy the enemy might rely on to buff himself up, you can just destroy that. It's a 1 hex wide nuke, and once you have like 4 spellbreakers in your rosters, it's nigh impossible to buff yourself really well up against these guys. On top of that, they deal double damage to magic origin units. Since we rock the Tome of Summoning at some point, summonings are just not effective against you anymore. Not at all. So these guys are really important, and my personal recommendation is to replace all your Arcanists at some point with Spellbreakers. You can consider keeping some Evokers and White Witches nevertheless, because they are actually quite powerful and useful. Feel free to fill up your ranks with some Skirmishers when you can afford them. Your mana income, you will notice in the very beginning of the game, will be one of your major hindrance points. So, but I must say, I feel very unstoppable with this build as soon as I have access to my tier 2 units. What's really important to note here, let's enter the strategy section with that, you really have to cast before you fight. It's a little bit weird, but you might be already used to stuff like that from the feudal faction and stuff. You just have to have the lifesteal enabled before you attack. But that's one thing. Strategy-wise, well, it's Mystics. It's quite straightforward. You want to print out as many Mystic projections as you can, and feel free to enchant them with the Wayfinder enchantment because you want as many Astral Echoes as you can achieve. You can power them up with the Altar of the All-Seers, and as any Mystic economy, your biggest hindrance point at the start of the game will be gold. So try to have as many cities as possible, as fast as possible, because that's one good way to increase your gold income, and also focus into vendors and markets as soon as you can afford them, because these are really, really important for you. One really nice point about the Ice Magic Tome that we picked up is also that it gives us access to the knowledge extraction trait. So that makes early warfare highly, highly income positive in terms of knowledge. And the astral path that we have here is also very powerful in knowledge gain. Try to focus into your research as hard as you can, because it's one of your major sales points in this build. I also want to mention how strong magic materials are with the astral affinity, because you can give them a knowledge income at some point. And since you have a pretty high astral affinity with that build, grab as many magic materials as you can. I mean, you would do so anyway, I hope, but this gives you another cutting edge for having that. So surge spellcasting is one thing. If you happen to be on a map where mana is a little bit scarce, very, very powerful. There are realm modifiers which make this strategy a little bit harder to pull off, and it's pretty good to lower the costs even more. I also love philosopher soldiers because knowledge gain is just that powerful, and quickening, yeah, please pick it up as fast as you can. So most of the other things down the road here are, well, things that you just want to have, especially Astral Binding here. The Magic Origin units become your late game, and you will enjoy that a lot. Your Chaos options that you got, because you have a lot of Chaos Tomes, allow you to go for a little bit more of a income gain while warfaring. So all in all, this is an aggressive build because you gain a lot of payoff due to the shadow affinity out of warfare. So you're free to torment your enemies around you because it's really, really easy to destroy the enemy. One thing you should always stay aware of, though, you have a very, very fragile front line. You're relying mostly on spells and magic tricks and healing and all those things, and spell shields are, at the end of the day, only tier 2 shield units. So if you can get a hand on some higher tier frontliners, this can be something that you might want to have. The interesting part, though, is the spell shields hold throughout the game because your damage is just that stupidly high, but I just want to mention you have sort of a liability there. Anyways, so that's all I have to say about this one. It's stupidly fun. The life-stealing affinity makes you go totally ham. You can keep your units alive in a way that I haven't seen before, because it means also that not only your frontliners survive well, if ever your backliners get nuked, they don't care. You don't need to worry about them. They just need to keep firing and they are just good to go. So, pretty strong thing. Since you also have a lot of summons, it's really easy to beat down the hardest of AIs with that one. I hope you enjoyed that, and feel free to leave me your comments. I would love to hear what you guys think about the Mana Addicts trait. I also think about doing another build with that one, maybe a little bit less straightforward, a little bit less of a straightforward choice. Let me know what you guys think. A thumbs up on that video would be wildly appreciated, and of course consider subscribing. I would be delighted to have you folks. I have a playlist link down there leading to all the other Age of Wonders 4 videos that I did, and check them out if you'd like to see more. Have a wonderful day, and see you next time.